Language is essential to life. For animals, it's usually the first thing that they learn how to do is walk. But for people, the first thing that we learn how to do is speak, using words like ma, da, and ba to communicate our ideas, the things that we want. And on a basic level, for people, it's communicating your thoughts and ideas and emotions. On a more serious level, it's us creating policies, and maybe even starting wars or establishing peace between countries. So in a real world example, we see a common example is in Africa. One way that they communicate is in giving directions. You know, that if the way that they tell you how to get to a place is by saying, oh, you know, go north by northeast. And so because of this people group have a very great sense of direction compared to us when we're like, turn left, turn right. So we don't know, like, if you tell me to go west, I don't know which way that is. And that's an example of how language can really shape our worldview. Another example of this is in some third world countries where they have harder access to education, and some deaf children are not able to receive the help they need to be taught a language. These children, they don't know how to help these children learn how to speak or use this type of sign language. So what they're seeing happening is that these families don't know how to communicate to their children who are deaf, and these people grow up and the only thing they can do is go outside and work, not communicate with their families. So there are some nonprofit organizations who will go and actually teach these children a type of sign language, and their whole outlook on life changes. They're able to communicate with their families, express their ideas, get to know who these people are that they're living with. And so I think this is a great example of what Ludwig Wittgenstein says when he states that the limits of my language are the limits of my world. So today I'd like to convince you guys the importance of language and hopefully convince you to learn a second or even third language for some of you. The things that we're going to be talking about today are how America compares to other countries and how many languages we speak, the benefits of speaking another language, and some applications and how you guys can even start learning how to speak another language. So to begin with, how America compares is SwiftKey, which is a Microsoft's keyboarding software company. They give us some statistics on how America compares to other language, or in how many languages they speak compared to other countries. Unfortunately, predominantly English-speaking countries have a very low bilingual and multilingual percentage. The US, Australia, Canada, we have about 10 to 15% people who speak multiple languages in comparison to places like Israel, Egypt, and Indonesia, where they speak between 50 and 75% of the population speak 2 or 3 languages, and that's a big difference. So I was curious about one of the reasons, like, why doesn't English-speaking countries care about speaking other languages? And part of that reason is because English is one of the dominant languages out there. And so behind Chinese and Spanish, English is the third most spoken language in the world. And so because of that, it is the business language and the travel language. So a lot of people end up wanting to learn to speak English. In America, we have this mindset that we're like, oh, we don't really need to learn another language because everyone here speaks English, and there's not a huge necessity in our day-to-day life to have to learn another language, which is actually a huge drawback in a lot of the benefits which I will be talking about that comes with knowing multiple languages. In Africa, they have about 1,500 to 2,000 languages that they speak. So there is a lot of necessity for these people to grow up having a lot of opportunity to practice languages, where here we're going to need a little bit more of an incentive. Which is going to bring me to my second topic, which is the benefits of learning to speak another language. The first benefit given are health benefits for your mind, which I have statistics from, or some health benefits for your mind from Eaton Institute, which is a language, communication, and cultural company. And they say that one health benefit for your mind is that it improves your cognitive thinking. So you're going to be able to think faster, retrieve information quicker than your monolistic peers. Second is you're going to have improved memory. It's like learning a language is one of the absolute best ways to improve the strength of your brain. Your brain will actually, it's proven, will grow a little bit in size, unlike other areas that people will be learning, because it causes takes so much mental capacity to learn another language. And then also the long-term overall health of your brain. People who are monolistic will usually start developing signs of dementia around the age of 70, where people who speak more than one language won't start developing dementia for another 5 years after their monolistic peers. A second benefit is financial and career benefit. So Dr. Lazo, who is the head of a school in a bilingual school in Berkeley, he talks about how it improves a person's personal capital for what a company will value you as, so your skill set. You're going to be a more valuable person for companies when you can speak multiple languages. First off, because you are going to be able to have more cultural sensitivity. So in a growing workforce world where everything's becoming more global, people are looking for people who not only have a decent education, but the cherry on top is going to be that you can speak another language, and that's going to set you apart from other people when people are looking for jobs. A third benefit is just your overall quality of life. So for people who speak another language, they are more likely to travel, which is going to not only influence just the happiness of your life as you're experiencing more of life and realizing kind of how small you are, it's going to give you greater appreciation for other cultures and give you that type of sensitivity, which is going to help you be a greater contributor to our communities in general. Lastly, I would like to be talking about how we can begin applying learning another language. So let's see. Steve Kaufman, he is a linguist specialist who's been studying languages for over 50 years. And he speaks over 16 languages. And so this is a great man to learn from in how we can begin by practically applying. And he gives 3 key tips in learning language. The first is going to be your attitude towards the language. So if there is a language that you're like, okay, I see the benefits, I want to start learning a language. You're like, okay, so find a language you find is beautiful. Find a language that you appreciate the culture, and those are people that you want to be a part of. And even the attitude you need to have is being able to visualize yourself speaking this language to these people, because if you can't visualize and appreciate the language, you're going to lose the steam and advance that you need to be able to complete such a hard task. Second is the time and dedication that it takes to learning a language. Learning a language is not something that's easy, but it does have very high payoffs. So on average, depending on the different languages that we're learning, you should be expending at least an hour a day until the allotted time, which is usually around 2 or 3 years if you're actually spending an hour a day learning that language. So what he suggests doing, which is also what he does, is he'll listen to a podcast in that language that he's trying to keep his mind fresh on for about 30 minutes. And then after, he'll read also in that language just to give his mind the best of both worlds in those ways. So there are several really basic ways that we can start actually applying this. The first, which is probably the most easiest, which we can all do even right now, is just by opening up your phone and downloading an app. And in today's day and age, those are actually viable ways to fully learn a language. It's getting you started and is able to help you practice. So the best ones for iPhones and Androids are Duolingo, Busuu, and Memrise. And those are where you can create a profile, and you can, if you already know some of the language, you can actually take a test and it'll skip you ahead to where you're at, so you don't have to be wasting time with the basics. Or you can start off the basics and you won't have to feel overwhelmed. Second is you can actually take a class, which is great for all of us because we're already in college. It's a great way to get in into some of the higher ed universities in the area, and it's actually a requirement. And it's a great way to get involved in having your teacher giving you the homework times and being able to actually apply learning a language, talking to other students in your class. And like one of my friends, Kennedy, she's the president for her French class, and so she'll actually spend a lot of time practicing with her peers and talking, and she's actually creating a community already where there isn't a large French-speaking community here. So that's also a great idea as well. And then last but not least, which is kind of the big leap but is probably the most exciting experience a lot of us will have, is actually traveling to a country of the language that we're speaking. So if you want to learn French, going to a place where they speak French, that's going to be the quickest way actually for you to be learning a language, especially if you strict yourself to only speaking that language when you're there. You're going to grow very fast, and a lot of people are seeing almost complete fluency in a language from after 3 to 6 months of studying a language. So all this to say, I hope that me showing you how we compare to other countries, which is very low, the benefits of speaking another language, and how we can start to practically apply learning another language, that you guys might be interested, and that we can glean from the Czech proverb, which says that for every added language that you speak, you're going to live an extra life. But if you only live one, if you only speak one language, you're only going to live one life. Thank you.
So Alex, some comments?
I think she did fairly a good presentation. I think she gave us, she started off with a good introduction. She gave us, she clearly stated her position, and she also stated a preview. And she was also, she went into more depth on each individual topic that she planned on going into. She also gave many source-cited from expert testimonies, and just different information on how communication establishes a connection between thoughts and emotions towards other people. It also could establish more peace and avoid war. She also said that language is essential for communicating with other people in different languages or different countries around the world. She also gave a pretty interesting example of how deaf children, how parents of deaf children don't really know exactly how to communicate with their children, and they also, she also stated that deaf children miss an important social attributes that they attain through communication, and it kind of just affects their life in that type of way when they get older. She also compared U.S. to other countries, and how she stated that 10 to 15% of only U.S. Americans are bilingual, compared to other European and African countries where they practice 1,500 to 2,000 languages, which is a dramatic difference compared to us. She also stated that just the different types of benefits that go with learning a different language, the benefits of speaking another language, the health benefits for your mind, such as improved cognitive thinking, improved memory growth in different parts of the brain, as well as also your career benefits and personal capital. She also stated that there's different corporations that value that type of attribute more than people that do not have that that skill set to know a different language. She also just went more into depth of just the quality of life of knowing a different language, and just the happiness of an individual in general, and just the different types of opportunities that learning a different language, that someone that has more than just one language can use throughout their life, and further just have better life experiences through their journey. And in terms of some cons, she did pause a couple times throughout the presentation. I did feel that those were okay, just because she gathered her thoughts together, and she didn't really, what's the word? She didn't let that affect her speech. She went ahead and she took a little pause, took a little break, and then continued and I thought that she did pretty good at continuing. And she also ended with a good conclusion. So I think she overall did a pretty good presentation.
Okay, well, you did a thorough review of what the presentation was. I appreciate all the comments there. I'd agree with some of the things that you talked about. I do think that there's a place maybe to do some editing here, because you do get sidetracked on a couple of issues. The value of learning a second language, I think, is really what the focus of your speech is. So getting, talking about how languages change our perceptions a little bit. I thought maybe that's a good way to get our attention at the beginning of the speech, but it's not necessarily something that you spend a lot of time on or want to spend a lot of time on it. The whole issue about the deaf kids in Africa who don't have access to learning sign language, and how that creates problems, I think that's also something that is kind of off on that other tangent about the importance of language without necessarily focusing on the importance of knowing a second language. I think those things could be largely excluded from the presentation, and you could focus on the benefits of having a second language, and that would maybe make it a little bit more efficient, getting to the crux of the issue more for the assignment. Like I said, you're a little over time, and there's a lot of stuff that you're trying to fit in here, and I think that there's a place that you can do some honing, and that would be my suggestion. Generally, it's well organized. I could see the signposts as you're transitioning. There's a lot of citation of information. I think Alex pointed out a number of those things. I didn't think there was any big drawback in any of the presentation. Maybe sometimes the eye contact looks like you're kind of looking in our direction rather than engaging us, but that's not a big issue. That most of the time it felt like you were, in fact, talking to us, and I thought it was reasonably well distributed. All right, I'm going to stop there because